None of them are basically, I mean, the peace plans are basically favoring the Ukrainians as a nation which basically wants to restore its sovereignty.
What is the problem with any peace plans to end this war from my point of view? The problem is that Putin does not need any peace.
Putin, who inherited the habits of the Soviet Union, his mendacity also lies that he wants to achieve peace. If he wanted peace, he wouldn't have started the war.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center and NGO Euro-Atlantic Course, and I'm your host, Myroslava Yaremkin. Currently, Russia and Ukraine, as parties to the armed conflict, along with third parties involved in the war to varying degrees, are proposing peace plans that could become the basis for negotiations to end the war. However, Russia's latest demands appear to be ones that neither the government nor the people of Ukraine can accept. Ideally, negotiations to end the war in a manner acceptable to Ukraine can only be initiated after a successful counteroffensive by the armed forces of Ukraine, when Russian troops are pushed out of the occupied territories up to the borders as of January 2014, or when the remaining Russian forces are threatened with destruction. In today's episode, we are going to assess the viability of proposed peace plans in the Russian-Ukrainian war and discuss the common features upon which all the peace plans are based. If you want to learn more about the subject, please continue watching this video and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our videos in the future. The latest demands from Russia, under which it is ready to sit down at the negotiating table, were voiced by dictator Vladimir Putin on June 14th this year. These demands include a neutral, non-aligned, and non-nuclear status for Ukraine, its demilitarization and denazification, whatever that means, and the withdrawal of the Ukrainian armed forces from the entire territory of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions. Putin also demanded that the status of Crimea, Sevastopol, and the aforementioned regions as part of the Russian Federation be fixed in international treaties, as well as the lifting of sanctions against Moscow. Russia will try, at least until the elections in the USA, to squeeze the most out of the current situation to strengthen its position, while simultaneously fueling destabilizing processes in Europe. Archil Tsintsadze, expert in security policy, will talk more about it.
Well, before we start analyzing all the situation and the peace plans which are circling around Ukraine, how to stop the war in Ukraine, I did some research and basically I managed to find several options, the existing peace plans for Ukraine, and those are the various and the really different peace plans. And while just analyzing and reading them, I realized that we have wide range of options here, and none of them are basically, I mean, the peace plans are basically favoring the Ukrainians as a nation which basically wants to restore its sovereignty and the borders. What I just did was I numbered the peace plans and realized here that we have really different ways to go here. Well, I am not going to number these peace plans according to the time or the countries, alphabetical number of countries they were introduced, but I will simply try to explain what is the main point which locks all these peace plans. The first we have now, which is basically just a merged peace plan, is the China plus Mexico peace plan, which they are saying that these peace plans, which already has supporters in the world, and more than 70 or 40 countries supported this peace plan. We haven't seen the peace plan, but what we suspect that it will be the next suggestion to Ukraine to cede its territories. I also can mention here the second peace plan, which I also heard. The This is from the European country, which is Hungary, and I would call that Orban's peace plan. It's also again general. It's also again stopping shooting, stopping the war through ceasing fire and ceasefire, and then starting negotiations. And it's again without any preconditions, without anything, and then it also lacks the main point here, which basically might be again with the Russian interest simply to cede the Ukrainian territories to Russia. Well, here, while we're talking not really preferable peace plans, I could mention also the one of the first peace plans, which was signed in 2022 by Ukrainian authorities. It was, I would call it, Turkish and Ankara peace plan, which basically, not Ankara, but it happened in Istanbul, as far as I remember. And it was the peace plan which basically was signed by Ukrainian side. I would say that this peace plan was more than capitulation. And what I basically expected here, that I would see something new. I mean, the new, I believe, in sense of which might be after this capitulation plan, I would call it capitulation plan, and could offer something new and what was not discussed and what was not mirrored in Turkish peace plan as a capitulation, I would say. I could remember one more peace plan, which was really active whole 2023, and in the beginning of 2024, it was 10-point Zelensky's peace plan. So we are now down to the fourth peace plan, and it was actively also discussed within the world leaders and then peace plan, Zelensky's peace plan, and there were a lot of researchers and institutions who basically speculated on this 10-point peace plan, which was basically never adopted. Even in Ukraine, it was well spoken, it was well accepted, and never basically turned into some kind of real peace plan. Then it comes Ukrainian peace formula, and this Ukrainian peace formula is like a world summit of the leaders, where these suggestions how to end up the war in Ukraine and then start negotiations and start some kind of peaceful period. It also went, I believe, nowhere. Went nowhere just because it lacked the second part, which is basically the opposite side, the enemy side, which is really the point we need to take in account when we speak about peace or just negotiations, because we need the other side to negotiate with.
Experts note that there will be no results from the negotiations if Russia does not gain at least something, and it will demand the maximum. However, from the Ukrainian side, the focus of the negotiations should be on the exchange of prisoners, compensation for the losses caused by Russia to Ukraine in the economy, energy, social infrastructure, and ecology, as well as the conclusion of an appropriate legal document defining the borders and the conditions for their demarcation. Ihor Seletskyi, director of the NGO Euro-Atlantic Course, will assess the common features of the proposed peace plans to end the Russian war in Ukraine.
Indeed, several peace plans have emerged recently. A Chinese-Brazilian peace plan, a peace plan of Trump's advisors, Pompeo's peace plan. It's obvious that we are more interested in the latter two because the Chinese-Brazilian one is of a very general nature. These plans have different levels of complementarity in relation to Ukraine. Pompeo's plan envisages Ukraine's membership in the EU and NATO, and the advisor's plan says about some security guarantees which are not very clear. Besides, they have different views of Ukraine's possible armament. But they have two things in common. First, Ukraine refuses to recapture territories that are not under its effective control. That is, the territories occupied by the Russian Federation. That is, in fact, the negotiations begin based on the front line, which will be at the start of the negotiations. Of course, no one formally recognizes the occupation, all Western countries will consider it part of the territory of Ukraine, but Ukraine will not take these territories by force. The second common feature is that both plans envisage coercing both Ukraine and Russia into negotiations. The coercion of Ukraine will be carried out through the threat of termination of financing and supply of weapons. If Ukraine doesn't agree to negotiations, it will not be given weapons and finances. The coercion of Russia will be carried out through the threat of increasing the supply of weapons to Ukraine. That is, if Putin doesn't agree to negotiations, then the states will arm Ukraine even more, will provide more powerful weapons, and will give permission to strike deeper in the territory of Russia, etc. What is the problem with any peace plans to end this war from my point of view? The problem is that Putin does not need any peace. And I do not understand why Western experts and Western advisors cannot realize this. Putin does not need part of the territory of Ukraine. He does not need Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk or Lugansk oblasts. Putin needs all of Ukraine, either by occupying and joining it to Russia, or by establishing a puppet government on the territory of Ukraine, a pro-Russian government, and thus Ukraine will become a satellite of Russia. Actually, this was the initial plan when Putin launched a full-scale aggression: to capture Kyiv in 3 days, install a pro-Russian government, and thus return Ukraine to its sphere of influence. To make Ukraine forget about the EU and NATO and to make it focus on Russia. This is the main problem. That is, one can write any peace plans for offering anything to Putin. He will play head games, he will put forward conditions that Ukraine will never agree to and cannot agree to. He will use the ceasefire to build up its military capabilities, to increase weapons production, etc. But Putin does not need peace, and this should be realized. Even if there is a ceasefire, even if some negotiations begin, the issue of a new major war is only a matter of time. Therefore, there can be only one peace plan: force. Putin understands only strength. First, Ukraine should receive a lot of weapons. First, Putin must realize that he will not win a war of attrition. For now, he believes that he will win the war of attrition with Ukraine, that Ukraine is being exhausted both in terms of weapons and in terms of moral and psychological state. The war has been going on for 2 years. That the West is also being exhausted. He believes he will win this war of attrition. Putin must realize that he will not be able to win it.
The collective West does not have a single agreed-upon view of how to end this war, and therefore no unified peace plan. Currently, all of the USA's partners are waiting for the upcoming presidential elections in the USA. The White House's position is to provide Ukraine with limited aid, which is insufficient not only for victory, but even for effectively confronting Russia's forces due to restrictions on the use of weapons. President Joe Biden's approach aims to end the war through diplomatic means, with victorious results by maximizing the military and economic weakening of Russia and ensuring strong positions for Ukraine. However, in reality, the war is now just being prolonged. Yuri Lukanov, journalist and writer, will elaborate on Russia's false peace claims through the years of its existence.
Now peace is talked a lot about. Actually, not only now, but since 2014, when Russia unleashed its war by occupying part of the Ukrainian territory. Peace has been talked about since 2022, when Russia began its large-scale aggression. Not only that, Putin presents himself perhaps as the greatest peacemaker in the world and tries to prove that he wants peace, but aggressive Ukraine refuses, and the only reason is its stubbornness. I want to remind you that in the Soviet Union there was a song that sounded like a question: do the Russians want war? And the answer was, of course, they don't, because they suffered so much in World War II that they simply cannot want it. Nevertheless, the Soviet Union did not hesitate to occupy the sovereign Czechoslovakia, which wanted to carry out reforms, but the Soviet Union did not allow it to do so and left it under its control. It also started a war in Afghanistan, a bloody war that took many lives and lasted for years. And there were many other actions on the part of the Soviet Union, in particular provocations which caused the Caribbean crisis in the early 1960s, and so on and so forth. Putin, who inherited the habits of the Soviet Union, his mendacity also lies that he wants to achieve peace. If he wanted peace, he wouldn't have started the war. But he offers a peace plan. His peace plan is that Russia must not only keep the territories it has already occupied, but also take over the territories that the Russian State Duma suddenly declared as its own. That is, Ukraine must transfer to Russia part of its territories that are still controlled by Ukraine, but are written in the constitution of the Russian Federation as their own. It is clear that no one will give this to Putin. But why is Putin now most intensively sending signals to the West that he wants to achieve peace? Because Russian independent experts say that there are huge problems with the Russian economy and there is a risk of its collapse. Because Russian experts say international sanctions, despite their imperfection, work. And Putin cannot properly restore weapons, so he simply fights with some old tanks and other weapons that have been deconserved, that have been preserved since Soviet times. Therefore, he desperately needs a break to recover, to restore his military potential, because they do not hide that their goal is either to bring independent Ukraine under control or to destroy it, as Dmitry Medvedev, the former president of Russia, not the last person in the Putin's hierarchy, says. Listen to him and you'll see. It's just another chicanery. Russia, having stopped and taken a break, will restore its potential, and in 5-10 years will start a new war, since this idea is in the minds of not only the leadership of Russia, but also a lot of Russian people. Ukraine offers peace, to restore territorial integrity, to return to the borders of 1991. This means that Russian troops must be withdrawn from there. Russia won't agree to this. In other words, it means that Ukrainians and Russians have completely opposite ideas about peace, and there can be no compromise here.
You've been watching the special project of Ukraine Media Center and Euro-Atlantic course dedicated to the Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukraine in Flames. In the description under this video, you can find information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you find our work useful, please like and share this video. Slava Ukraini!